comment on matters not on the agenda. And then the commission's response is limited to responding to criticism, asking staff to review a matter commented on, or asking the matter to be put on a future agenda. This is not regarding the topics that will be brought forth tonight. Is there anyone in the public that would like to address the commission at this time?
Mr. Chairman, I do not have any requests to speak, but we will unmute the line for the WebEx.
So seeing none, there's none, we'll move forward to the administrative items. And the very first item on the agenda is to congratulate Councilmember Kathy Tilke. So congratulations as our new council member. And I'll try to do a little intro. You've got a rich history, a lot of experience, and so glad that you can serve the town on the council. Councilmember Tilke served as president and CEO of the Gilbert Chamber of Commerce for 24 years, retiring just this year at the end of June. She celebrated 32 years in the chamber industry. She's a graduate of the first class 1, and a founding member of the Gilbert Leadership Program. She has served on a variety of Gilbert's committees over the years and has had the honor of participating in visioning, planning, and then witnessing the results of all those efforts. She is a founding member of the East Valley Chambers of Commerce, EVCCA, which represents 8 chambers at the state legislature since 1998. She's also one of the founders of Positive Paths, a program that assists East Valley women help themselves through furthering their education and career path with scholarships and mentoring opportunities. We're very thankful to have Councilmember Tilke aboard as council liaison between this commission and the council. So we thank you so much for your service, and we look forward to working with you. The next order of business is our outgoing Commissioner Tyler Jones, who will still be serving for the town of Gilbert on the Planning and Redevelopment Commission. So Tyler, tonight we'd like to provide a sincere note of gratitude to say thank you to you. We know you're stepping down from the Redevelopment Commission to serve on the Town of Gilbert's Planning Commission. We thank you for your ongoing service in a different capacity. You served on this commission from November of 2017 through September of 2020, and during your 3 years of service, Tyler, you provided significant perspective and guidance to the Heritage District projects, including the 2018 Heritage District Redevelopment Plan, adoption, Culinary Dropout, Hale Theater, Aspire Heritage District, HD South renovations and expansion, the Herney Way parking garage, and the Heritage District design. So you got a lot done in 3 years, and you had a lot of input. So we thank you for that. We appreciate your dedication to ensuring that through the adherence of our redevelopment plan and design guidelines, that the Gilbert's Heritage District continues to be the symbolic heart of this community, and that was with your help. So we thank you. And with that, I think staff's prepared a plaque for you, so I'll present that to you.
It's been a real pleasure working with our commission and staff and many of our residents. So I really enjoyed these last 3 years, and I appreciate everyone and your participation. I'm excited to be part of the Planning Commission, so I look forward to continuing to work together very closely with the Redevelopment Commission. We had our first meeting a couple of weeks ago, or my first meeting as part of the Planning Commission, and I don't know what I got myself into. I saw the agenda, which is multiple times of what we typically discuss here in the Redevelopment Commission. So I look forward to continuing to work with all of you, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. So the third and last item on our administrative agenda is to consider approval of the minutes for the regular meeting held on July 15th, 2020. Are there any edits to the commission wants to make, or do I have a motion for the commission to approve the meeting minutes for July 15th, 2020?
I motion to approve minutes for July 15, 2020.
Perfect. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Seeing none opposed, the motion carries forward. So thank you guys. Appreciate that. So now we're going to go into our study session, and typically the staff will present first, and then we'll get public comment. But I feel like it'll be helpful for me and their commissioners if we can hear from the public first. If there's a burning desire to speak after the presentation, I don't see a problem with that. But we will limit it to 3 minutes. So the study session will be what was presented prior in stakeholders meeting. So if you attended those, whether you're on the telephone or you're here present, hopefully you have a recollection of what staff presented at those prior meetings. And if you took notes or if you have questions, comments, concerns, I would like to hear those now, which I think would help me. So with that, if you want to come to the podium now, state your name, place of residence, and then you can speak up to 3 minutes. It's a public process, so we want to make sure that the public's involved. And so if you would come forward, if you have anything to say now, and again, if after the presentation, if somebody can indicate whether or not they'd like to speak again, I'm all for that. So is there anybody that would like to speak tonight on tonight's agenda?
Mr. Chairman, we have one request to speak from Doralice Machado Liddell.
Perfect. You can come forward, state your name and address, and then limit it to 3 minutes. And then I'll probably at the end of 3 minutes say thank you for your input.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Doralice Machado Liddell. I'm a Gilbert resident. The design guidelines have been discussed throughout the 30-year Heritage District redevelopment history. Private property owners have been living with the threat of eminent domain condemnation and uncertainty about their private property rights. The current Heritage District design guidelines currently state the use of the word shall and must have been purposely avoided within the specific guidelines. It further states that it establishes the Town of Gilbert suggested principles for designing quality downtown development. The town staff states that the comparison from the 2010 to 2020 design guidelines demonstrates very minor changes that have been made to the Lacey track requirements. I do not believe that making the design guidelines a mandatory legal requirement is a minor change. This change affects my private property rights. I did not purchase my property with mandatory design guidelines, with the Government or Homeowners Association, with the requirement that I submit my custom building plans to the Redevelopment Commission for approval. I asked that if the design guidelines prohibit Airbnb or vacation rentals, how would the property owners react? Once the area is no longer under state redevelopment laws, the design guidelines will still be in effect. Once again, this affects my private property rights. My private property rights are being treated differently based on my zip code. Such actions represent a discriminatory use of the Land Development Code, and the design guidelines is the avenue in which it takes place. I asked the Redevelopment Commission to not recommend an ordinance in any way violates the voter-approved 2006 Private Property Protection Act. I asked that the design guidelines remain just that, a suggestion. Regarding Veterans Park, the view of Veterans Park is not accurate. The Paseo does not line up and will cut through the park. Staff states that the height of a public institution land by right is 55 feet, but the town staff fails to state that there is a 25-foot setback from the residential properties and parking must be included in the development. The town is stating that Page Park is within the neighborhood. What they failed to mention is that the community center, the Heritage Center, is housed in the park. The children's play area is located behind a chain link fence behind the community center, between the community center and Heritage Center. The only grass area is a water retention basin. The town staff fails to mention Lawn Avenue Basin Park, which will be sold to a developer. This is also a park which is not included in the design guidelines. Our park's based on square footage. If you live in a poverty area, does that mean that you are entitled to less square footage? If you live in a poverty area, does that mean that you are not entitled to open space? Relating or replotting, place a commercial building in a neighborhood park does not conform to the voter-approved general plan, the redevelopment plan, and the park's master plan. In closing, I understand that a developer or the town views a neighborhood park as a way to make money. The developer views the parkland as green for money. I view parkland as green for grass and open space that should be preserved for future generations, especially in a redevelopment area. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. So with that, we are going to move into the staff's discussion regarding Z19-01. And before the staff presents, we have asked Councilmember Tilkey to provide a brief intro and perspective on the Heritage District guidelines. So if you would, thank you.
Thank you so much, first of all, for the very warm welcome And I was very excited when the mayor appointed me to this commission as liaison, because I've spent the last 24 years in talking about redevelopment. And I think, as you mentioned in my bio, the opportunity to actually be part of when there was nothing there and seeing what it's become. There's very few people in my profession or others that get that honor to see that. And so I'm thrilled to be here. What I wanted to share just briefly is the history of guidelines as we have this discussion today. I've been involved with 3 general plans, 3 redevelopment plans here, and the actual initiation and implementation of several design guidelines that are used for different categories of business development and others within the town. And I just want you to understand and the public to understand that the guidelines are that. And the reason that we looked at putting them into place is because when an applicant comes forward, so in this case, a resident or a developer comes, they understand what the desires of the community are for the property that they want to develop. But so that's all outlined, but it allows them to make some decisions, probably save some money from not having to design a bunch of things, come in and be told that that's not the direction we want to go in. But at the same time, it allows the flexibility for that developer to come in and say, this is what my project brings. I'm not going to be able to meet X, Y, and Z. It is part of your guidelines, but I'm going to be bringing something else to you that we believe will be of value. And what that does, it allows you and the staff to make decisions individually about that project and does it meet the intent. And so that's what the guidelines are for. And I think it's really important that the public understands that piece of it. The other thing is that guidelines can be changed. So if these are passed and when people come forward and bring a project to you and you find that they are too restrictive, they're not reasonable for any development, you can go through that public process and try to change those to make them more flexible or more restrictive depending on what the needs are. So I just didn't want to lose that piece of what the guidelines are intended for. And then I really, as I close, I just want to say thank you to the public for their feedback. And Doralice, I know you've been here a lot. I'll look back. And I want to say thank you because I know a lot of your comments have been incorporated into this. There's always unintended consequences when we first put something on paper, and to have that level of detail and feedback is important. I take that seriously with the general plan and the redevelopment plan and even these guidelines. My comments were a page and a half of things that I thought we could tweak. And so that's really, really important. And the town staff, the amount of time that they've put into, I really believe this particular project had more significant feedback from residents and businesses than any in the past. And I think I want to thank you for that. That's hard work, but you went the extra mile, and I think the design guidelines are showing that. So you've got some decisions to make tonight and to provide wonderful feedback, but I want to thank you for your time as well. And with that, I'm going to sit down and thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember. I appreciate that. Super important perspective. And then in my 3 years serving as well, the proof's in the pudding. And I've seen, a guideline, there's, to your point, the letter of the law versus the intent of the law. And to see how staff works with developers when in the guidelines, the word shall is used versus the word should. But there's every opportunity for someone to come forward and say, hey, well, I don't want to do this, and here's why. And that's why we're serving. We're unpaid servants to make sure that if somebody wants something that doesn't fit that parameter, that we can look at the value of it and say, hey, it fits, let's do it. And so I've seen it time and time again, both by us serving and by staff. And so I thank you guys for that. And I think we use the word should in these guidelines, and it's just, there's too much, and maybe other folks could take advantage of that. So I think there's been a lot of thought put into this process and a lot of time, a lot of effort. And with that, thank you again, Councilmember Tilke. I'll turn it over to the staff for item number 1, Z19-01. There was one question, and that is, maybe staff's can address this, but we're going to actually up here vote on these slides. And then if there's a no, the public will know there's a no and by who, right? And then I'm assuming so. You can address that. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me with the mask on or, yeah? No?
I am social distanced enough, so I'll just kind of talk with it. Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the Commission. My name is Amanda Elliott, and I serve as the Redevelopment Program Manager for the town. And I have been working alongside Amy Thames, who's our Principal Planner, and she'll be here to support me on any of these items that you guys may have questions about. But wanted to just jump in to the design guidelines. The purpose of tonight's meeting is really to receive Redevelopment Commission input on items of conflict or in need of clarification. So you all received a draft of the design guidelines in July and reviewed those and provided input. We then released those to the public for their input, and so we will be looking to you for some direction. We're going to be doing this direction through polling, and you'll see that in just a minute. And ultimately, what your directions provide us with tonight will allow us to finalize edits to the Heritage District Design Guidelines. I think it's important to review the purpose of the design guidelines and why we're here. In 2018, Council adopted a new redevelopment plan. And as such, we want our design guidelines to reflect that updated redevelopment plan. But we did outline some goals that we felt were important for this update, including the fact that we wanted them to be comprehensive, to solve challenges that departments across the town had faced, to be easy to navigate, utilize more imagery to demonstrate what we're trying to achieve, and be future focused. So this just gives you a quick timeline. You'll see, again, that draft review that we presented to you in July. We then took it to a technical committee meeting. The technical committee is comprised of departments across all of the town, so they were able to review the design guidelines and provide feedback. Then we also brought it to a stakeholder group and received their feedback. From that, we put the design guidelines out for a public review comment period for more than 30 days. And then we sought clarifications from that stakeholder group, which is a cross-section of developers, residents, business owners, and so forth in the Heritage District. We thought it was important to note that we tried to be as transparent as we possibly could through this process. We created a landing page that explained the purpose of the design guidelines. We also created a video. So the presentation we provided to you in July, we walked through those design guidelines as well in a video that's located on that landing page. And through this process, we received 317 comments from the Public Stakeholder Committee and Council. We created a workbook that allowed the public to see clearly all of the public comments and to also see their individual tabs. So you'll see the commenters C1 through 15 on the bottom, and they can see their own comments and staff responses. To provide some perspective, we accepted 89 edits to the design guidelines based on those 317. We declined 162, but we wanted to note that declining also was utilized when a question was asked or a comment was received that didn't necessarily require a text edit. We had 23 items that were not applicable, 31 that were items that are being brought forth today, where we basically brought those forth in a grouping. And there were 12 staff discussion items, which we'll mention at the very end of this presentation. So essentially, we came to you, got your input, we went to the public, got their input, and we brought this all back to a stakeholder committee. And so we wanted to share with you the results of both the public input and stakeholder committee input tonight. There are 16 stakeholders on the committee. 4 were in attendance on October 14th. Of the 4 who were in attendance, they provided 240 of the 317 comments, just to provide some perspective. So for tonight, we're going to use Mentimeter. So if you have your phone in front of you, you'll go to menti.com and you'll put in this code 4794637. And if you could just kind of give me a nod when you guys are ready. Good.
Do we have to make an account for this or just put in
Nope,
the numbers?
Just put in the numbers. Yep.
I need some help with staff because I typed numbers in, then a different screen comes up with that same screen I'm looking there.
Is it this screen that's coming up?
That screen there.
This screen is coming up?
Yes.
Okay, then you are on the right one.
Okay.
Yep, if that screen is showing on your phone now,
Perfect.
and now you should be seeing this screen.
Beautiful.
Seeing
Yeah,
design guidelines update. Yep. Go back once more. We'll get you all set. All right, are you all seeing this on your screen now? I got it nods over
Yes.
here.
Sorry, yes.
Nods over there. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. This just allows staff to really move our discussion along. So I wanted to provide a few overall overarching notes about the design guidelines. First, the term shall. And we've heard some discussion already about this tonight, but the term shall means that the intent of the design guideline is met and is required, but there's flexibility on how to accomplish that intent. So I think that that's really important. You know, we have to have design guidelines that can flex and ebb and flow and change. There was some confusion overall in those 317 comments about the town's guiding documents and how they interrelate. So staff will be creating some descriptions about all of the guiding documents, general plan, land development code, engineering standards, redevelopment plan, and design guidelines. And we will create a flow chart on how each of those documents interrelate. There were some comments and questions about some architectural terminology. We noted that those were in the land development code, the definitions, but we will add those to the glossary for this set of design guidelines. And then there was a lot of comments and questions overall about the cross-section dimensions. And as staff examined these further, we felt that moving more towards components and zones, as are noted in the redevelopment plan, and eliminating the actual cross-section, the dimensions from the cross-section, will make it a lot clearer. So you'll see that in the updated design guidelines. So for tonight, though, we will be reviewing single-family residential, Congregate, the Paseo, Veterans Park and Legacy, and the plant palette from Create, and then we'll provide you with a couple of miscellaneous notes. So we're going to go ahead and move into single-family.
If it's okay with the commissioners and staff, I'd like to recuse myself from this section just because I own personal property in this aspect. Thank you.
Thank you. So for the single family, we are noting two residential areas, Lacey Tract and Greenhow Place. It's important to note that on this map, we will be removing the commercial Heritage Village Center zoning from the Lacey Tract map, which runs along Gilbert Road on the easternmost border of that Lacey Tract outline, and the northwest corner of Gilbert and Elliott, which is also zoned for Village Center zoning. And then for Greenhaw Place, we will be extending that shading all the way down to Elliott to incorporate those houses that are located there. So I think it's really important to provide a perspective on how staff created the design guidelines. And we first went back and looked through all of the 7 years of public comments we received from the 2018 redevelopment plan process. And when we looked at single family, we heard things like protect the single family neighborhood. We want to protect the character. The character should reflect the area. The architecture should be reminiscent of older architecture. Architectural guidelines should have teeth. These are all of the comments that we saw throughout that public input. And so staff use that as our starting point. But we also had a challenge, and our challenge is finding that balance. How do we protect the neighborhood? How do we protect the architectural character in these single family areas, but also ensure that we're not infringing on owners' property rights? So we started with a comparison of the 2010 design guidelines, and I know these are incredibly hard to read on the screen, but I'm going to just talk through them. We started with a comparison of 2010 to 2020. And you'll note that there are areas where we said items should be approved by the Redevelopment Commission. You'll see that there's areas where we say not permitted. So for example, I'll just walk through each of these. Fences, walls constructed of masonry, vinyl, wrought iron, wood, or other decorations or other decorative materials as approved by RC, meaning that these are the materials you can use, or if you want to use another decorative material, you need to seek that input from the Redevelopment Commission. We stated that front porches, courtyards, or roofs, raised stoops are required, that the architectural vernacular should be primarily bungalow, farmhouse, cottage, territorial ranch, mission, arts and craft, and contemporary or modern architecture is not permitted. Again, looking at that input from the 2018 public input process. So you'll see that these are all of the items that we noted. Some of these, though, as you'll see in this slide, are already included in engineering standards. And one of the things that we're trying to do is eliminate redundancy across our documents. We noted in our stakeholder meeting and through the comment process that we will go back through our document and ensure that there aren't redundancies between all of those documents and just clean that all up. So for example, undergrounding of utilities is already included in towns' building and engineering standards. And then all of these bullets are already in the single family area. We just cleaned up the text. And again, going back to our goal, we tried to make it not as text-laden of document, but just really clear and concise. So we had to ask ourselves, though, if we're protecting a character of the single family area, what is that architectural character? So we named off these various architectural styles. And we thought these are the ones that don't align with the architectural character of Lacey Track, which was established in 1920, and Greenhaw, which was established later. So modern, contemporary, stucco, modular, and prefabricated. And I think it's important to note that all of these can be built in a very beautiful way. We just didn't feel that they fit the character that we were being asked to retain. And there's certainly challenges. I pulled this lot as a picture. The lots are 6,000 square feet. These lots are split. And the reason I show this is because staff also has a challenge. So we're listing these architectural characters, characteristics, and styles, but we're allowed to have up to 3-story buildings, 3-story homes. So what does a 3-story farmhouse or a 3-story bungalow look like in comparison to modern or contemporary? So again, we're going back to, we've changed these guidelines to say that these contemporary or modern architecture is not permitted, that gabled or hip roofs, parapet roofs can be approved by the RC because of the 3 stories. That is already allowed. We did say that single story was encouraged. Again, the overlay in this area allows for up to 3 stories, but just given the architectural character and trying to retain that, we felt single story was most appropriate. So we have the set of design guidelines, we put it out for public review, and we receive these type of comments in regards to single family. Too many as approved by RC items, concerned that it creates a homeowner association-like environment, creates threat of eminent domain or condemnation. But then it's interesting because this is the balance we're always trying to seek. We had the opposite comment. I hope planners use these design guidelines. No point in having design guidelines if they're not followed. And then we had ones that say, design guidelines feel mandatory as opposed to incentive-based, and shall and must should be avoided, so they're not mandatory. So similar to how we're polling you tonight, we polled our stakeholders and we asked them, is there an architectural character for both Lacey Tract and Green Ha that we really should be trying to preserve in this area through the design guidelines? And of the 4 that were in attendance, 3 said yes and 1 said no. And the reasons they stated was that the design guidelines, I'm sorry, it's like freezing in here and my teeth are chattering. The guidelines should allow for a broad range of styles that are appropriate in scale to the size of the lot. The character is a reflection of the property owner. Smaller homes and smaller lots is what was established through Lacey Tract. So that was the reason they felt that there's a character we're trying to preserve. But then we said, okay, so do the design guidelines, do we accurately represent the architectural styles that should be listed in Lacey Tract and Green Ha? And 2 said yes and 1 said no. Again, we can't have design guidelines and then put out something like apartments. And they were referencing the district lofts that was nearby, which do not fit the historical character of Lacey Tract at all. If these can go in, why can't another property owner be able to do something similar? I think, when we discussed this in our stakeholder meeting, we're implementing the new design guidelines now. So we can't be thinking about what happened in the past. This is what happens from the future forward. It says that it will be developed, however, forcing something on property owners through a regulation is not the way to go. And then we asked, okay, so should single-family residential neighborhood requirements be more relaxed? So should we have them more inspirational? Should we use the term encourage instead of shall? 3 said yes, 1 said no. The term encouraged would be preferred as it makes it less prejudiced. A property owner may not want to give their ability to build over to the Redevelopment Commission because that's up to their perspective of what should or should not be there, and changing the guidelines as a violation of their property rights. So again, how do we find that balance? If we're trying to if we heard for 7 years, protect these neighborhoods, and we've also heard what we want, we want to retain our property rights. It's important to note that one person's idea of high quality is not necessarily the same as another's. It's not an apples to apples comparison. So if there's no parameters set for a style, we're left at the whims of those who are designing. And we've seen in Lacey Tract and Green Ha, we've seen really great design come forward in some of the homes. And then we've also had requests for modular homes, mobile homes to be placed on those sites. And so today we're really here asking you, what should we do? You are the governing body and we would love to have your direction. And so the first question, we want to ask you the same questions we asked the stakeholders. Is there an architectural character for the single family neighborhoods that we should preserve through guidelines? And so this is where you would use your Mentimeter to vote. Great, thank you. On any items where there seems to be a discrepancy, we'll go ahead and have further conversation. But if at any point you'd like to converse on any of these questions, we're always happy to take comments and questions. So the next question here is, did the town accurately represent the architectural styles that should be listed for Lacey Tract and Green Ha? Meaning that there's no contemporary or modern allowed.
Can I ask a question first? Was there a number of styles that you actually had? Was it 5? Was it 10? And the other question too, saying modern. I mean, there's some. I'm very a property rights guy, and I love modern. And I look at our commissioner that recused himself. I think his is bungalow, but very modern to me. But yet it's not defined as modern. But I think they're modern looking. They're beautiful. So I guess first question is how many styles were defined, and could you reiterate what Councilmember Tilkey said? If someone wanted to build a modern, not a mobile home, but even a mobile home, they could bring this forward to this commission, and we could say, hey, that's an amazing modern house that would work. In this, can you clarify?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. There are 7 architectural styles that we listed. So we listed bungalow, farmhouse, cottage, territorial ranch, mission, arts and craft, and mid-century modern. But to reiterate what we talked about in the beginning, shall is meeting the intent. So if you can prove that you're meeting the intent, there's opportunities to have flexibility. Does that answer your question? Okay, so the next question is, should the single-family residential requirements be relaxed to be more inspirational, using the term encourage in lieu of shall? And again, if you'd like to have, okay, great. We've got 3. Excellent. Thank you for your direction. And then we also asked, should character-related guidelines and material guidelines? So in that example that we gave, where we said, here's the list of materials. You can have wood, you can have vinyl, you can have masonry. If you're going to bring something creative, you can bring it forth for approval. We'd allow alternatives for approval by the Redevelopment Commission. So should those character-related guidelines and material guidelines be listed as shall, but allow for approval of alternatives?
And that language allowing for approval of alternatives is listed in the document, right? Because materials change all the time. Fake wood. So just want to make sure that's very clear.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, yes. So for example, on that wall one, it says decorative materials as approved by the Redevelopment Commission. Great. Thank you. At this time, then we can move into the Congregate portion of our discussion. So
and Commissioner Bigelow's joining us back on the dais. Thank you.
So there were some overarching comments asking why we included park spaces in the design guidelines. And first and foremost, staff spent a considerable amount of time looking at best practices across the U.S. And we tried to emulate those best practices. The 2018 redevelopment plan, though, calls for joyful public spaces. And we feel that by showing these public spaces in the document, it ensures that that public comment that was received over a 7-year period is not lost when we undergo a capital improvement project. So when town builds a project, when we are writing a development agreement, or when we're approving design aesthetics within a gathering space. But even more than that, it informs the commercial and multifamily development that may be adjacent to these open spaces, how they should orient their development and interface with said space. So really looking at that 360-degree architecture. There were some questions about why we had some parks in the Congregate section and not others. So the 8-acre site on the southeast corner of Gilbert and Elliott previously had a deed restriction, and it no longer has that deed restriction. But staff has been given direction by council to not plan out the site at this point. That is why you don't see it in the 2018 redevelopment plan. There was a question about the Boys and Girls facility, which is at the lower left-hand corner of the screen in the PFI zoning. It's the southwest corner of this snapshot. We did not include the Boys and Girls Club because it's an area that already has a use The outdoor space is actually utilized. You'll see all of that green space. It's utilized as a stormwater detention. So when it rains in the Lacey Tract area, this is where the stormwater runoff is. It's relieving the stormwater runoff in that area. So we did not anticipate, because this has a use and because that detention is necessary, we did not anticipate this ever changing. The Vaughn Avenue Basin, which I'm sorry I did not put a picture of here, but this is at the very end of Vaughn where it dead ends at the Union Pacific Railroad. There is another detention basin there. It is listed as a neighborhood park. It has no amenities. It's an open grassy area. Again, we did not include that because it's currently stormwater detention, and because in the future, the redevelopment plan calls for that area to be built out with the Vaughn ventilator. So putting a plan to it now when we're going through the process of pre-design for the Vaughn ventilator did not seem appropriate to spend the dollars on that. However, we did note that, perhaps Page Park is one that we should have considered. But again, when staff had looked at it, we thought the same thing. Like Boys and Girls Club, there's the water detention of that area. It's the big grassy green area. It also has, the rotunda there. There's no planned development surrounding it. You have Gilbert facilities surrounding it. So our thought was you can include it on the map, but it doesn't necessarily need an X on a metric. So just to be clear, the image on the bottom, that sample axonometric, is what we're talking about when we talk about creating the axons. So again, this item really came from some comments on why did we include some parks and not the others. So we asked our stakeholder committee, should Page Park have a set of design standards and an axonometric like public spaces currently represented in the design guidelines? And the answer, we had 2 no's. It says parks, but then overall, the comment came up that parks should not be in the design guidelines because they're public parks and architects and the town already know how to design parks, and that Parks and Recreation is in charge of parks, and the general plan, includes park spaces. To that, we've already, I think staff has already identified the reason we felt that it was really necessary to include park spaces. And it is true that the general plan identifies park spaces. But we want to know if we had, ultimately had an oversight and if we should have that axonometric and the design guidelines behind it. So should Page Park have a set of design standards and an axonometric like the public spaces currently represented in the guidelines? I'm seeing 2 yeses and 1 no. 1 no. Do we have a 4th vote? Mr. Chairman, because we have a no vote, though, I believe it warrants, the commission having a discussion so that staff can better understand your perspective.
Sure. If the no voter would like to explain, that'd be great for public and staff.
So I'm the no, but it's generally just the agreement with the 2 comments that I saw there. I think they folded in other things, but I don't need any further discussion. I don't know.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. There was also some questions about the Paseo. So the Paseo is the north-south pedestrian and bicycle route from Juniper to the UPRR, which would underground and lead into Veterans Park. You'll see that there are 3 segments. So you've got the north segment, the underpass, and the south segment. Right now, the capital improvements project team within Gilbert is working on hiring a consultant to help with pre-design for the Paseo. So pre-design does a handful of things. One, it helps guide the architecture lists out some of the main components that should be included. It also looks at the engineering. So in the 2018 redevelopment plan, it clearly states that all of the concepts here are concepts and that the engineering behind it has to be validated. So this would validate the engineering, and it would also put a cost associated to the entire Paseo, including the underpass, so that staff and council can certainly make a direction going forward on how we proceed with the Paseo. The axonometric that's currently included is really meant to be inspiration for all of the segments. So those components that we'd like to see, like, specialty lighting and paving. But we do agree with the public comment that we should really note that the south segment, the Lacey Tract area, is not an urban cross section as shown. Going back, though, to the CIP, if the underpass connection to Lacey Tract is viable, we could see that the pre-design could create an axonometric for us, that shows that non-urban axonometric. And if, through this pre-design phase, the engineering and the dollars don't work out, and they say, you know what, we're never going to be able to achieve an underpass, then there's really no need for an axonometric. So that's why staff felt, ultimately noting the Paseo is meant to be inspirational, the segments that are shown, the items, noting that they would be different for the urban and cross section. So we did ask, our stakeholder committee, should there be only one axonometric for the Paseo that notes that it'll vary by section and we'll need to refer to the redevelopment plan. And we had 2 yeses and 1 no. And the comment was given that it should remain because it would change the vision of the redevelopment plan. So we're also looking for your perspective if we should only include one axonometric for the Paseo that remains as inspirational imagery with a note that the Paseo varies and to refer to the redevelopment plan. Great, thank you very much for your direction. The next item is Veterans Park. So again, when we went back to that 2018 redevelopment plan and looked in the appendices under all of the comments and reviewed all of our notes from the public outreach, these were just a few of the comments that came up. Fix up Veterans Park, public restrooms in Veterans Park, crime in Veterans Park, please extend Veterans Park. And then there was a note that Gilbert Road south of the tracks is unpleasant and avoided as a walking route. As staff began to examine the overall area and the parks in the area, as we were building out the design guidelines, we noted that there's 2 neighborhood parks in Lacey Tract, and we wanted to just really identify that there's the distance of that yellow line, so from the eastern end of Veterans Park to the west kind of entrance to Page Park is a total of 1,252 linear feet. It's approximately 480 steps. So there's 2 neighborhood parks within Lacey Tract. And we really wanted to take that into consideration and make sure that Lacey Tract still had all of the elements of a neighborhood park, regardless if it was at Page Park or Veterans. This gives you an aerial view of Veterans Park and its parcels. And you'll note that there is the area that has, it's got a fence around it. There's some power poles, dirt area. In the comments that we had received, this was the area that people focused most on. And it was for a number of reasons that we, as staff, suggested including a building. One, buildings are allowed by right in PFI zoning, and they can actually be up to 55 feet by right. But more than that, when we look at providing direction for the future, we really wanted to understand what people's challenges were. One, a building could allow for public restrooms. Neighborhood parks do not have public restrooms. That's just a typical standard. So this could be a potential solution. There was a lot of concern that we heard from neighbors, residents over the years about the safety of this area, particularly as you have a neighborhood park abutting a very busy road. So we felt that the building provides a buffer from Veterans Park to Gilbert Road. So that was some of the reasons that we included it. And again, the design guidelines are really meant to be inspirational and try to be inventive. What could we see this area evolve into? Because our last design guidelines were in 2010, 10 years ago. What will this area look like in 10 years? So the public comment that came back from this, though, was, again, bifurcated. So you had remove Veterans Park from design guidelines, public restrooms. Once the Paseo is included, there'll be minimal usable space. Veterans Park isn't accurate. But then we had other people who commented in those 317 comments, please do not install a public restroom at Veterans Park. And I like all of the other plans with Veterans Park, including how you show a patio on the building opening up to it. And individuals, you said, the residents in the area want more for the park, and that the triangular piece is just dirt, and they'll hope it will develop in a way that will cater to the neighborhood and residents. And so, again, as staff, we're really challenged with how do we meet the needs of these two conflicting comments that we're receiving. We thought that first and foremost, though, that it was really important to look at, to do a comparison and analysis about what were we asking to be included in the proposed park. So the current park includes all of the items that are listed on the left. But you can see we added additional items. We really felt that this needs to be a neighborhood community park, a place that is multi-generational, a place that families want to gather. So we added notes like not just a bench, but we want to see comfortable seating, places that people will actually stay and spend time together, outdoor grills, preserving those existing mature trees, providing climate control. We did receive some questions about what does climate control mean? And we're going to define that a little bit further in the glossary. But climate control can be anything from additional trees to it could be shade structures. It could be sail type canopies, those type of things that help, help individuals stay out longer, especially in our summer heat. Restrooms, we did request that those be included. And again, we noted that we felt as staff that a 1 to 2 story structure, if this was ever to be built, should be preferred, because 55 feet on that small area just didn't seem like it fit. And so we try to do a little engineering. We had that comment, like once the Paseo comes through, it's 24 feet. Once it comes through, we'll have no room left for Veterans Park. So I measured that red line on the very bottom is a little over 24 feet. I wanted to give a little buffer, but you can see there we're showing that 24-foot path. We're showing 0.978 acres, that could be used for all of those amenities we talked about, and 0.675 acres, to have more of a building and kind of patio green space area that flows nicely with the overall park. This just demonstrates another view of that. And I thought it was important to note that 0.675 acres, when you think about what does that mean visually? Water Tower Park is 0.616. So that kind of gives you a little reference on how much land we're actually talking about. So we asked our stakeholder group, what do you think? Should we be showing a building for inspiration on that vacant dirt area? And there were comments like it does not conform with the general, 2 said no, 1 said yes, does not conform with the general plan or redevelopment plan. That those processes, there's public involvement. But then we also had somebody who said it'd be productive to have some inspirational ideas about the property. It connects the southern and northern portion of the district visually from Gilbert Road. businesses in the southern part feel disconnected, and having the building kind of starts to bridge that connection, and also that it does create that buffer from the neighborhood and the park. And so again, this was a really challenging area for us because we had such conflicting comments from the public. We just kind of had to go back to, what's the purpose of these design guidelines, and they're meant to be inspirational. By showing a building, I think it's important to note that by showing a building, it doesn't change the general plan. It doesn't change the redevelopment plan intent. Again, this is inspirational. If a building was ever to be built that was non-public PFI use, it would have to go through council approval. It'd have to go through a rezone. And so, we were really just looking for what happens with that dirt lot, and should we show and start to show some of that inspiration. And so we would like to ask you this as well. And again, feel free if you guys want to have any conversation, but should a building be shown as inspiration for the vacant dirt area adjacent to Gilbert Road in Veterans Park?
So staff, Amanda, I have a couple questions on that. Does the building particular you've shown there, you don't have a crystal ball, but what could that be if it wasn't, if it didn't go out for commercial use and a developer didn't try to bid on it and rezone it? What could it be? Could it be a rec center for kids, an adult center, for seniors? Could it be an art center, craft center? I mean, what does that look like if it was a park amenity?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Redevelopment Commission. I'm Amy Chems with the Planning Department. And actually, previously, the Foreign Legion, or the American Legion, was approved there with their new lodge, and it just never came to fruition. So it could be a lodge, some kind of gathering facility like that for an organization. It could be any kind of recreation facility for the town, obviously, but it's very limited what could go there under PFI. Really, it would require rezoning to have a restaurant or any other kind of hospitality or anything related to that, or an entertainment that was a commercial entertainment venue versus a more public venue. So it is very limited with what can go on that site.
Thank you. And that limitation, if a commercial applicant or if the city or the town decided, hey, let's send this out for an RFP and get requests for proposals, ultimately a bid on it, and if it was rezoned, would there be issues with parking, with trash? Those things would be addressed at that time, correct?
Correct. Even any town project that would go on the site would go through a design review and come to the Redevelopment Commission for approval on such. After it would get if it's rezoned, it has to automatically come through. And even if it is under PFI, it still will come through as a design review through this group. And all of that would be addressed at the time of design review. That is the purview of design review. And we would deal with parking, anything to do with trash, landscape, the aesthetics of the building, grading and drainage for water flow and how it's taken into the park or if it's undergrounded. And we'd also deal with colors, materials, all the typical things you see in your staff reports.
Perfect. Last question. How long has it been an unused, dirt triangle like this?
Fire station was taken down probably, I want to say back 06-ish, somewhere back in 05, 06, because the American Legion came through, I want to say in around 2009, off the top of my head, give or take, it was approved. And it was done in a very modern design, but it did not come to fruition.
Thank you. Any comments from other commissioners?
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, we are now on to Congregate Legacy. This is the park that is noted in the redevelopment plan on the east side of Gilbert Road, behind it's Gilbert Road and Page, the south Page, east of Gilbert Road, behind the Allstate building. The comments from the redevelopment plan came back that we want more open space. We want to see a dog park. We want to see more family park area. Please extend Veterans Park. Oh, that was from the last one. My apologies. And love open spaces with grass, water, and coverage. There were some questions, though, about why is Legacy Park look so different than Veterans? And Veterans, we really saw that again as that place where the families are congregating. It's, I'd bring my 5-year-old to have the blow up bouncy house for his birthday, right? And we'd barbecue there. Legacy is different. It's an urban park area. It's an area that, has kind of a central water lake feature that you see in major metropolitan cities. It's got that, usually has some type of water feature, some type of signature architectural piece in the center where people hang out and sit around for hours, reading books and picnicking and all of those fun things. So the one area, though, on this park, you can kind of see how we laid that out. The one area on the park that we continue to have questions on is that dog park. And so in the design guidelines, we noted this could be an area for a small, what we called a dog run, like a small off-leash area, not taking up the entire park. And the reason we thought this may be a good area for that as staff was because all of the housing just to the east of this park is multifamily. So as you continue to have more density and more people, we felt having an off-leash area for their pets close by and nearby made a lot of sense. It is also, Amy shared with me that it is one of the most requested park features that the town receives. So we included that in the design guidelines, and the public comment came back that, why does Legacy have a dog park? A single use shouldn't dominate that park or open space. And, a dog park's for dogs, not people hanging out. It seems strange. We had some of our business owners who would be just to the west of this park, say, I'm concerned about, any kind of noise that the pets may be creating in this area and odor and such from pet owners not picking up after their pets. So we asked, well, would that small dog run be more agreeable if it was noted that it shall be adjacent to the residential zoning and not the commercial zoning? And unanimously, all three of the individuals said no. They felt like it would be better served if the multifamily had a note that they, encouraging some dog type of enclosures on their developments, or, maybe there's a better park space somewhere within the Heritage District that could accommodate this, because if the park is meant to be more of a restful kind of relaxing setting, incorporating this active use ultimately changes it. So those were the comments we received, and we really, again, are looking to you all for your thoughts. We're going to do this in two votes, so I'll let you know what the next question is too. So first we're saying, is it agreeable if we say we'll put it closest to the residential and keep it away from the commercial? And secondly, we're going to ask you, should we just eliminate it overall? So let's start first with, is it more agreeable this way? Great. So we all feel that it's more agreeable if it's closest to the residential. But the bigger question is, do you think it should be removed completely? Do we just get rid of it, or do we continue to have it and say, you can have the small dog area, but it has to be by the commercial or the residential, pardon me.
Quick question. When we say small dog area, do we have a ballpark of how many square feet we're talking?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Bigelow, we have not defined the actual size of the space. We would certainly, we could certainly look at that opportunity. But at this time, we just noted that it needed to be a small off-leash area.
Cool. Okay. I was just curious, just because I love dogs and I'm all about dog parks, but I feel like it is such a small, quaint urban park as is, that it's like, I don't know how much space there would be for how many dogs to even be off a leash in that little area, just because it is up and coming and growing. So just my thoughts.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Bigelow, thank you.
I have one question for staff. Why can't little dog runs or dog, confined areas, be looked at in all the parks or some of them? I mean, I live across from a very small park, and I just feel like I always have my dog has to be on a leash, and it'd be nice. I was just wondering if staff looked at the other parks as possible places for smaller dog runs, not dog parks as we know them across the valley.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, we really, as staff, we didn't really consider including all of them. I think that, from my perspective, and I'd look to Amy as well, is a conversation we'd want to bring the Parks and Rec department in on before we made any determinations on including it across the board in all of the parks in the Heritage District. And yeah, Amy's nodding that she would agree with that. So before we could say why not conclude it, I want their input on operations, maintenance, those type of things that come into that type of a run area.
Great.
And we certainly can do that. I thought about this night, and my fear was with a 4 commission, we're going to have a split. I think, there's an opportunity for Amy and I to do a little bit more exploration of this item and talk a little further with Parks and Rec, and we'll use, tonight's discussion as an opportunity to move in a direction, and when we bring forth the next set of design guidelines as a draft, you guys can help us tell us if we moved in that right direction. Mr. Chairman, does that seem sufficient? Good for us to go back and rethink it? Okay.
I think Commissioner Bigelow made some good comments about the size of the park already. That's important. There are companies that encourage you bringing your animal to work a lot, especially in Colorado. But maybe this is not the right fit right here. So yeah, come back and let's look at it again.
I think a drawing or something just showing or representing what it would be, I think would help everyone visually kind of see this is the direction that we would be going with it, and just make it see if this is even doable. Like if this is going to work with what we're trying to achieve. So I think that would be great.
Great, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Bigelow.
Mr. Chair, Amanda, I just for the sake of giving you guys some feedback, just to talk about, I was a yes remove only because it seems like there's a 2-2 split here. It seems like there was some community disagreement. I don't know that a dog park is if the juice is worth the squeeze. I don't think a dog park is important enough to be controversial, to be honest. And that's probably getting personal. But if there's any disagreement, it strikes me as a component that's not important enough to disagree on. Meaning, scrap it.
Great, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Hamilton, thank you so much. I think that's a great perspective, and I also liked, the idea that was brought up during the stakeholder committee meeting of, going back and looking at that multifamily and, noting that we would encourage that outdoor space for pets as well. I think that was a really great comment brought forth by our stakeholders. All right, we're now in the create section. There's currently a plant palette in the 2010 design guidelines, and it guides new commercial, mixed-use, multifamily projects on what plants would be allowed on their projects, not just along the streets. Now, it's important to note that ADWR, the Arizona Department of Water Resources, governs what's in our right-of-way. They're the ones who identify the types of plants that we can use. And for our arterial right-of-way, the town has a street tree theme. So this plant palette is not part of that ADWR or the street tree theme. But we had a lot of comments about why are the plants restricted to these? There's probably some additional ones. It felt, the comments were that it felt limiting, since these were on commercial property, multifamily, that it should be up to the developer to decide what type of plant they wanted to include. And again, that's one of those areas where we would just simply agree with the public overall. We're comfortable saying if developers want to pick what plants, they can pick what plants. There's already guidelines for what happens in our right of way. So as such, we're recommending the removal of the plant palette for commercial and mixed use altogether from the guidelines. And just want your thoughts on that. Should we remove the commercial and mixed use plant palette?
Mr. Chairman, just a quick question. The staff. So this would be, any commercial, any multifamily could choose any plant that they want in the downtown?
Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair Hudgens, yes, they would be able to choose any plant that they want. Are there any, except for in the right of way? But on their site, yes, they would be able to select any plant that they would like.
And to the staff, that still comes back to this body here for overall approval, yes or no?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to defer to Amy Thames on that item.
Good evening once again. As far as a commercial project or multifamily project coming into downtown, their landscape is all in your packet that you would receive with your staff report. So yes, unless it was administrative because it was small enough that it didn't need to have a public hearing, it would come to you and you would see that palette. And we've had some, the current design guidelines allow for accent plants being special. And, when Joe Johnston redid Joe's Barbecue, the front lawn area and some of that, he created a photo op with specialty cactus and stuff like that. And that was outside of the palette, but because it was an accent, it was approved. So there is still room for, variation. It's just within the right of way. There are specific trees that are, approved. Pistache tree is the primary tree we see planted on Gilbert Road, and the original tree for the street tree theme in downtown was the Washingtonia palm tree, which we've gotten feedback over the last couple of years from Redevelopment Commission that maybe the palm's not the best tree for downtown and it doesn't provide the shade for that climate control. So one of the things we're recommending in a land development code update and in the street study that's being done for trees over this next year as part of a capital improvement project is that tree be changed out to possibly the pistache to keep with what's been requested and changed over the years and move away from the palms. But other than that, the plants in the right-of-way tend to be predominantly trees because the right-of-way is very narrow in the downtown. And so we're looking for a shade tree, but we also have the signs that we have to deal with too. So we're trying to look for that happy medium of distancing and spacing and the variation. But yes, it's a long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah.
You would see it.
Thank you. And historically, we've approved palm trees by next to a pool, off in the beaten path. And so we've looked at it from a 30,000, so we've actually looked at that and approved palms, even though it doesn't, fit. So
Correct.
Thank you for that.
You are remembering the multifamily project in the back corner, and that whole palm tree discussion did come from there. So they're not restricted in that way, and they could still, and by removing the guidelines, you could allow for that. But also, if you keep the guidelines in, there can be language in there that allows for the flexibility that you could approve something a little outside the norm. So once again, it looks like we're split. So we'll have to study that a little more and come back to you. Thank you.
I'm one of the no's on this, and just to explain why, I do think I love plants. I'm not an arborist at all, but I'm obsessed with trees. And I think especially with downtown growing as it is and the multifamily and it becoming more concentrated, having not intrusive or invasive trees or plants so close to property lines and so many people and sidewalks and plumbings. I mean, we spent so much money on upgrading all those water lines and everything as is that I think that should always be considered. But I also think that since we're talking about keeping it the cottage, the farmhouse, mid-century modern and these different looks, the landscaping, I mean, as much as the structure affects the look, so does the landscaping as well. So I think having those two kind of go hand in hand on that. And that's just my 2 cents.
So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Bigelow, I feel like I should clarify that the plant palette is not for single family.
It is
only for commercial, mixed use, and multifamily.
I still think the guideline is a good idea. And then if somebody has something specific that they want, then they can present it and just kind of go from there.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just going to state that I'm agreeing with Commissioner Bigelow. I think the commercial aspect impacts the overall downtown as well, and I think it's important that we look at that.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, are there any other conversation points for the plant palette?
I just appreciated prior, you talked about redundancy in some of, I think there's some redundancy and there's still an opportunity to work with the developer and this body. So that's why I voted yes, we can remove it, because there's still enough catches and enough staff and enough, so I'm just clarifying why I voted yes, because I think there's still enough opportunity to push something in the right direction. So anyway, but this is why we're here. So thank you. Yeah, I got no more questions.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, thank you so much. Amy and I will review this item further. I'm operating 2 PowerPoints here, so forgive me. I just wanted to provide that's all of the voting that you need to do tonight. So I just first and foremost want to thank you so much for providing this direction. It's incredibly helpful to staff as we move forward. And we are very thankful for all of the public comments that we've received and all of the input we've had over the years. We're better because of our public comment and how involved individuals are in our downtown. I've been working with the town for 8 years, and I can tell you the most impressive thing I found in working in the public side of things is how passionate people are about Gilbert. And it's just been really incredible. So I wanted to end with a couple notes. One, there were a lot of questions in the design guidelines about signage. And staff worked with our legal team to talk a little bit more about signage. But again, council has directed staff to eliminate redundancies from these town documents. And signage is located in the land development code. We felt that it was redundant to have it in both locations, the land development code and the design guidelines. And legal certainly felt the same in looking at the document. There's a lot of discussion about bike and micromobility circulation. So in the beginning, when we noted that there's still some ongoing staff conversations, these are certainly the areas that we're talking about. How do we start to incorporate bicycle and micromobility, into our overall plan? And finally, we just want to know, there's a lot happening in the Heritage District right now. These are nine capital improvement projects that are ongoing today that staff is currently involved in. So to the public, we appreciate their patience with us through this design guidelines process. I know that there's been some questions that have come up, and we've had to ask the public to please hold as Amy and I go back through all of these 9 CIP documents and meet with the teams to ensure that we're not missing anything, that we're not contradicting any statement that's being made in these projects. So we're just trying to keep it all zippered. And so to end the presentation, the question next is, when will you see us up here again? And I don't have that answer just yet, but we will certainly circle back with the Redevelopment Commission and update our landing page on the website. The reason we don't have an answer is because we want to take your comments and the edits and take a look at what that is actually going to take for staff to accomplish those. So with that, yes, I'm going to hand it over to Amy.
So sorry to butt in, but I did want to clarify something. When you asked me what could be built in public facility institutional PFI for Veterans Park, I wanted to be clear on my response, because I said it's limited, but I should have said it's limited based on what the town of Gilbert would go out for an RFP under what's permitted under PFI. There are a number of uses under PFI that are not appropriate at that location. And I am very comfortable saying that I do not think economic development or the town as a whole would support like an automotive repair on such a location. So there are some uses listed in the table in 2.9 that are not appropriate for that site. And we in no way would reflect that. We are looking more at an organization such as the American Legion, or it would be an entertainment and recreation venue that would either be oversight by the town, or if it's private, it would definitely be something where there's some kind of public-private interaction occurring. So I just wanted to be clear that, and I didn't want it to be out there that I was advocating some of these uses that would not be appropriate for the site. So thank you. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, that's the end of my presentation, and I look forward to any further discussion, questions you may have for me at this time.
I have none.
I have none either. Just wanted to thank you for all your hard work and effort into putting this all together.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Bigelow, thank you.
Thank you. And because this happens every 10 years, this is not traditional as our normal way of doing business. But if there's any more speakers that want to come forward now and limit it to 3 minutes, I'll allow that, because every 10 years we do this. So if there's any more public comments, come forward, say your name, limit to 3 minutes. This meeting's gone longer than normal, but again, it's important because it does happen once a decade. Anybody that would like to speak can come forward.
Mr. Commissioner, we have a request from Doralice Machado Liddell to speak.
Hello, Doralice Machado Liddell again. My comments are what you just mentioned. You said every 10 years. Well, every 10 years, the redevelopment plan by law has to be approved by council. I was told on numerous occasions by the town attorney that is only a guiding, that's a vision, it's a guideline. What we're doing now on the design guidelines is totally different. What is happening is that you're developing a requirement, an ordinance that provides that will be everlasting. I won't have this chance in 10 years to come back. My property rights are now. I didn't give them up when I purchased my land. I didn't give up the property rights that I had, just like everybody else. Throughout the years, the rights of the property owners in Lacey Tract have been taken away. They have been taken away. So in 30 years, we haven't had a design guideline that has been a requirement. This is something new. This is what you're imposing on the residential homeowners. This is what the property owners. So I take that very seriously, because I am very pro property rights. Everybody's property rights, no matter where. And I hope that you wouldn't want your property rights taken away. I have a comment on the park. When we talked about public institution land, when we talked about that, but then we went into rezoning. If you're rezoning and you make it HVC or Heritage Village or whatever that is, that then reverts to shared parking. That does not then require the parking as it does with private public institution land. So that's totally different. We talk about inspiration when we talk about the park, but we don't talk about inspiration when we come to the design guidelines as it on the residential homeowners. This is something that's totally different. I was inspired by the design guidelines. I did not need a regulatory authority to tell me to do the right thing. And I think that is where we have the government overreach. And I am very adamant about that. Also, what was discussed is restrooms. Public restrooms. I heard the conversation of, well, parks, neighborhood parks, we don't have restrooms in neighborhood parks. That is true. Nor do we have dog facilities in neighborhood parks. I am a proponent of restrooms. I think that the town, that you must have restrooms, because what is going to happen? People are going to need to use the restroom, and they'll be going into all the restaurants, and you will see signs that says no for patrons only. That's my concept. My concept was never to have a commercial building to establish the justification for a restroom. So that's,
Thank you. That's it. We're over 3 minutes, so
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, we're going to move into communications. And so I have nothing to report. How about our council liaison? Do we have anything to report? Nothing from you? And then commissioners, how about you? Future events, anything to report?
Mr. Chairman, I first just like to say that I'm glad that Kathy Tilkey, Councilmember Tilkey, will be the liaison to this commission. I know that she brings tremendous institutional knowledge when it comes to downtown. I remember my first redevelopment commission meeting before I was even a commissioner. She was here speaking and has worked with a lot of the business owners down there. And I just wanted to say that I appreciate that you're going to be a part of this. And then also, I've hit my 4-year cap. And so this will be the last time from the dais that I'll be up here. And I just want to just say what a wonderful experience it was getting to be a part of all this. And my whole life has consisted, the majority of it, for between Ray and Juniper on Gilbert Road. And so to be a part of the commission that helped design the 10-year redevelopment plan has been a tremendous experience I never thought I'd be a part of. And so I just want to thank staff. Being able to work with economic development has been a pleasure. And then all the commissioners on the redevelopment commission. So just thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's been an honor.
Thank you. And I think you're going to be here next month. So no hugs and, tears until next month.
It's true.
Thank you. Perfect. And with that, staff liaison. Anything to report?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I do not have anything at this time.
Great. Again, I thank you for everyone's time. I'm going to adjourn the regular meeting. The time is 7:29. Thank you, guys.